Welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here is Samson's take. It's Act Professionally, Stop the Abuse, Part 5. Now, every responsible police commander I have known since I started driving only some 20 years ago has confirmed the law and cautioned against officers impounding vehicles on account of a driver's inability to produce a driver's license upon demand for inspection. Yes, no commander or even low-rank officer with sound knowledge and up to the task interprets the law so poorly and so very embarrassingly. And sometimes we know, just for the purposes of extracting and extorting that 5 CDs, 10 CDs, 20 CD notes. The DVLA has shown integrity and respect for the people they serve by admitting that the threat to impound vehicles of drivers who are unable to produce their license for inspection was an error. They say it was a genuine mistake. They have clarified that that statement they issued was wrong. It was an error to have added Regulation 158 to Regulation 47. Yet some police officers are doing this. You are doing the job for the DVLA. They continue to abuse people, making impounding vehicles their default action over license inspection. Director of Driver Training, Testing and Licensing at the DVLA. What a consummate professional Kafui Semevo is. He won many hearts with his demeanor and the integrity of his communication when he made the admission and gave the clarity on the Super Morning Show. I just love public officers who demonstrate the appreciation that theirs is service to people and facilitating easy enjoyment of services by the people. In fact, I drove straight to their premium offices after my day in court that day to renew my license. Now, what does this Regulation 47 of the Road Traffic Regulations 2012 LI 2180 say? I'm sharing it with you. Let's read together. That's my copy. I've done something to it. It is so clear that I don't see how some of the errant police officers try to import Regulation 158 into it. Impounding vehicles for wrongful parking, for the vehicle not being roadworthy upon examination. It's not the same that this particular regulation requires. This regulation is very clear. And please, let's all comply with the law. It says a person driving a motor vehicle shall, while driving at all times, carry that person's original driver's license. Carry the original. Don't carry photocopy, so some police officer will have trouble with you. Now, in this age of technology, if they are having a copy or an image of their driver's license on their phone and they show it to you, I don't see why you should be angry. What you need is not the card, but the information on the card. Dear police officer, what you need is the information. And if he shows you they have a scanned copy, or even it's a photocopy, and it shows you the information. Why do you deal with them the way you behave? It is only the gun and the uniform that separates you from that person you interact with on the road. So here it is. Carry your original, please. Ghana people, your police people don't want trouble. Carry the original so that you don't have to pay 5 cedis or 20 cedis and 50 cedis. It says, a person driving or in charge of a motor vehicle on a road shall, on the request of a police officer in uniform, please note that they must be in uniform, or an authorized officer of the licensing authority, produce the driver's license that authorizes that person to drive the motor vehicle for inspection. For inspection. That's all you have to do. Inspect and give it back to them. Now, the provision you have been misconstruing is Subregulation 3. Despite Subregulation 2, a police officer in uniform may request the person to produce within 24 hours the driver's license of that person to that officer at a designated police station or to another police officer as may be directed by the officer. This one doesn't say you have a discretion in giving them 24 hours. The discretion here is about where they should bring it within 24 hours. That's the discretion you have. Not that you have a discretion to grant them to bring it within 24 hours or not. Now see the emphasis of the lawmaker in Subregulation 4, where a person driving a motor vehicle is required to produce a license, a certificate, or a document relevant to driving the motor vehicle. That person shall, mandatory, that's what our Interpretation Act says, produce it immediately. So that's the first step. Once the police officer or the licensing authority asks you to show your license, produce it immediately, right there and then. Or please, it is within immediately or within 24 hours of being required to produce the license, certificate, or document. So you don't have a discretion in it. If they can't produce it immediately, you give them 24 hours. Take their address. That's your business. Find out where you can locate them. The default should not be to impound the vehicle, because reading through all of this, there's no impounding of the vehicle for you to do. And finally, Subregulation 5, a police officer in uniform and not below the rank of an inspector may, where necessary, retain the driver's license. It didn't say retain the vehicle. Oh, retain the license for the period that the license is required, and shall issue an official receipt for the retention. Check that. You just collect it and you ask them to go. You must issue them a receipt for the retention of that license. Regulation 158 has nothing to do with this. Regulation 158 says that when you park your vehicle wrongly, unattended, they should impound it or tow it to their offices. When upon examination, that's not a question of inspecting a license. This one is about the license. Regulation 158 is about the item, the vehicle itself. It says when they park it wrongly, or when you examine it, examination, when you examine it, and maybe their lights are not working, their brakes are faulty, or something of the sort, then you may impound it, discretionary. You may impound it until the issue has been resolved. The guys are sphincters. On Monday, you arrested this guy. You took his license and impounded the vehicle in addition. You ask him to show up in court on Thursday. He shows up in court on Thursday. Your excuse to him is that, oh, because of certain things, you couldn't register the case for court. So he should come next week. His vehicle is still with you. What is this? Why are you abusing the uniform that they pay for? You have done the same thing to other people. You don't do that. Please, let's stop this barbaric conduct and act like we are civil and civilized. Thank you very much. That will be my take. Ashaiman is still on my mind. Until that blight is addressed, this democracy is but a sham. That's my take. We'll be right back to deal with the issues with my guests.
As I'm speaking now, I've been referred to Ho to even undergo some medical check-up. And because of money issued, I've not gone yet. It's very painful for a police officer serving this country for almost 35 years. And the little I had for that my stewardship and to be taken by the government, in fact, it's very disastrous.
My grandma doesn't have money to pay my school fees for me. So they'll sack me out of the school when my grandma hasn't paid my school fees. So today I'm here for my grandma's money so that she can pay my school fees for me, so that I can go to school. But in the future I can be a police.
Do you know who is holding your grandma's money?
Yes.
Who is holding your grandma's money?
Nana Akufo-Addo.
So if you meet him one-on-one today, what will you tell him?
I'll tell him that I want my grandma's money back for her, because we are plenty in the house, and then my grandma can buy food for us to eat when she doesn't have money.
I sold a family property. I feed several old women. I pay school fees for several young children. This one, I'll have a heart attack or stroke, I will die. Already I'm taking diazepam. Is it right to sleep at night because I have panic attack? My heart to start like this. Then I have to hit my chest. Then I take my diazepam. Is this right?
Could have gone on a route march, but look at us. Drinking some water. During those days when I was in the Ghana Armed Forces, for a period like this, no water was required. But for this little duration, you see, I'm holding water, drinking water, because the body has been used, and I will say by the government. For almost 40 years, over 38 years that I served the Ghana Armed Forces. During my time, I did my best. And my best was amongst the best, both within the country and outside the country. The missions that I went to, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Cambodia, all these places, I didn't feel the country. I did not feel the country. And I'm expecting that the country, at this stage of my life, will not fail me.
Dr. Edu Anyenini, thank you very much for joining us on Newsfile this morning.
Thank you, too.
Right. So Dr. Edu Anyenini is the convener of the Pensioner Bondholders Forum. Can you tell us why you are back at the Finance Ministry premises picketing with retired soldiers, retired police officers, that grandma with the granddaughters who are spending school hours picketing at this place instead of being in school? Why are you back there? You were exempted. The finance minister exempted you, so you shouldn't have any problems.
Well, that's true. We were exempted. And as I kept on explaining, I believe the government or the minister knew, or even if he didn't know, I have explained several times the meaning of issuer exemption. So once you grant the issuer exemption, you must know that you have to prepare your cash flow in such a manner that as soon as the payment is due, you pay. This is your obligation to do. When we got this issuer exemption, we have been waiting. Anytime the payment delay, we write to government, we issue press release. Once in a while, government will come and make some 1 or 2 payments and go and rest somewhere, tell you, I'll come some other day. It doesn't even tell you when the other day is coming. Once in a while, come and pay. So we gave a letter after a series of complaints. Our final letter to the ministry was dated 30th March, where we said if by 21st April, all outstandings have not been paid, and the outstandings are both coupons and principals. If they are not paid by 21st, we would resume the picketing. We had some engagement with the ministry, and we decided to add one more week to the 21st and made it 28. Since we gave that 1 week window to make it 28, that was on the 14th, we never heard from the government. 28 came, we haven't heard anything, no payment. So we informed the police that we were resuming the picketing. You don't have to give the police 5 days notice. We went to the police with a letter on 28th of April and said we're going to reconvene, resume on the 8th of May. And so 8th of May came, and we had to be there to ensure that we get all the outstanding payments, which are the coupons and the principals. So that is why we are back.
So cumulatively, for how long have the payments been overdue, and what are you being told?
Well, as at the start of the picketing on Monday, we had 19 coupons outstanding, and then 3 principals. And you see, as soon as we give the letter to the police, we send a letter to the police on the 28th. There's somewhere around Thursday, Friday, before the Monday of the start of the picketing, we saw that some payment has started trickling in. We believe that was for a 2nd March and that of 6th March. Then the Monday that we started the picketing, also in the evening, some people saw alerts on their phone that some money has started trickling in for 20th one, those that were due on 20th. And so that was since then we haven't seen any alerts of other payments. So if we were dealing with 19 at the time and we saw about 3 coming in, at the time we started, hopefully you can see now there is 16 more that has not been addressed at all. And then as we move along, further payments and further coupons were also maturing. For example, by tomorrow, 2 more coupons will be due. So as at the time that we were starting, that was the situation.
We are not happy that you are going to have to be picketing at this place because you don't deserve this. We're looking into our future, in this country, and we don't want to be treated in a similar way. Yet, I find it most unfortunate that we have left you guys to be there alone. This should not be you alone because your money is directly affected. So, I've heard you suggest that there is a way the government can end this situation. Of course, the government is also in a difficult situation. You say the government should borrow to pay up?
Yes, that is a suggestion I give. And I think the government is following through with that. Yesterday, after the picketing, we were invited into a meeting around 12:30. We had all gone, so I had again, the invitation will not come until the whole function or the picketing has ended at 11. So 12:30, we went in, we waited, but finally, this meeting we were supposed to have it the Thursday, but the Thursday evening, we went there, stayed for a long time, up to getting to 6, and we said, well, the 2 of us that went, we are all growing, and we need to go home early, take our meals, and take your medication before it's too late. So we left the premises of the ministry getting to 6 o'clock and went home and said, well, let's make it the next day. We're thinking in the morning we will be called. We weren't called until getting to 12, by 11:30, that they called us that we should come for the meeting at 12:30. So we waited. I had 3 more people who were still around to wait for me, for me to go. So we went in. The meeting was called by the Minister of State, Dr. Anyenini. And we had a lengthy discussion. And what we had agreed on is that the government is going to pay all the outstanding coupons on Monday.
Okay.
Including the coupons that will be due on Monday. Monday 15th, 2 more coupons will be due. And that is going to be added to the ones that have been due for over 60 days, 50 days, 40 days to be paid.
All right.
So we were going to give instruction to the agents to start the payment. And we believe that if we are even...
So thankfully, we are not returning. We are not going to see these sites anymore.
Yes. So we said, well, the idea is to ensure that we don't continue with that. Nobody wants it, but you see, we're forced to do that. So the coupons only are going to be paid from Monday. Monday, they are going to settle everything that is due up to the Monday. However, the 3 principals due, we are still engaging government to see how that can be paid. That has not been resolved. And then government also has assured us that it would get, one of the things we're complaining that the normalcy, pay us as and when it is due.
Right.
And government is undertaking to do that. As soon as the subsequent coupons are due, it pays, so that we don't come back to the picketing. So we met with these, we met yesterday night, forum, and we said, well, let us give government some space. Let's show that we also care. If it says it's going to pay on Monday, let's suspend our picketing for next week. So from Monday up to Friday, we won't be there. And then we will see what will happen during the week in terms of the payment and the arrangements that we have to make with government on the outstanding principals. If all things go well, then there will be no picketing. But if we hit some rock again, then of course we'll come back.
Thank you very much, Dr. Edouard Anyenini, for your time this morning on Newsfile. And thank you for ending this on a rather, refreshing note, hoping that the government will keep its part of the bargain. Here in the studio with me right now, and he'll be joined by others to help us discuss the issues that we have tabled to discuss for you this morning. Dr. Kwame Asasante is Senior Lecturer, Department of Political Science and Director, Center for European Studies, University of Ghana, Legon. Doc, thank you very much for sacrificing your time to be with us this morning.
Good morning.
Yes. What would you say about what is going on with the pensioner bondholders? I'll be frank with you. It's been very difficult for me. When I heard the kids, heard their grandma, and listening to the retired police and military officers, it was really heart-wrenching.
The same way that I feel. Very, very unfortunate. Why am I saying that? If you look at these people who have really served their state and served their state well, and there's a time for them to rest and then organize their homes, and they are in such difficulty, then it's a problem. Another problem is also the fact that here you are, these are people, some of them have received very meager salaries, they've been able to save and then support government with this facility so that government use it to run the state on our behalf, and the little that we are due should be given to us, and they are being denied. It's very, very unfortunate. If you look at other jurisdictions, when you hit that age bracket, you are giving support through the welfare system, and that the state virtually takes care of all your livelihoods all your expenses and the rest of them. Here we don't have that. So one would have thought that the little that we could do for these people is that the little that they've given to us, we give them what is due to them and not treat them this way.
Especially without sounding discriminatory, especially for people who have undertaken military service.
Yes.
You know, in the security services, as we understand, they simply give their lives, so to speak. And look at what he tells us, he's gone wherever, just serving this country. And at this stage, it's not that he's asking government to feed him.
No.
He rather, like you said,
Yeah.
has been assisting the government to run the country
Yeah.
with his meager, pension money.
Yes.
And yet they can't get it. The difficulty when you listen to some of them one-on-one is that they have planned their lives such that they depend on these monies.
Yeah.
So at the end of the month, they know I have made this investment.
Yeah.
This money will come. If it doesn't come, he's like your usual, worker who at the end of the month has not been paid. And for months, they don't receive it.
It's very, very unfortunate. Very, very unfortunate. And I blame the government for it. You see, we are in difficult times. I agree. I concede. But you see, governance is run on the basis of honesty, right? Let us know the situation on the ground. Have a word or two with them. Explain things to them so that you judge all. At the end of the day, a consensus will be reached and they will know where they are. But when you keep them in the dark and they need to put pressure on government, then it becomes a disincentive for people who are lazy their boots to be able to put their resources in government bond. We have heard from financial experts that one of the safest investments that one can make is putting your money into government bonds. So from today, are we saying that we can encourage people to invest in that area? I saw in the 90s, 80s and 90s or late 80s, where people took their money to the bank, the government of the day, through their own program, took people's money and never returned the money to them. This really affected the operations of the bank for a very long time. The banks had to put in extra performance in order to win the confidence of the public back. Is that the situation that we are creating for this country, which is already cash-strapped and we are struggling to make economic ends meet? I think this government must look at things and look at things carefully. It doesn't bode well for a country which prides itself that it is very much in tune with rule of law. It cares for the people, and that is in to serve the people through and through. Once you do that, you leave pain in the hearts of people, and it can have serious consequences. The economic consequence is what I've enumerated, but you have social consequences. The social consequences is that you are going to create all manner of health problems for yourself, the health bills. These people are already having health challenges, they are dealing with them on their own way. If they are not able to pay, it means that the state will have to come in and support them. Do we have what it takes to do that?
The retired police officer says he's coming all the way from somewhere in the Volta region. His transportation will not be reimbursed. The money that he spent coming down to Accra for this picketing will not be reimbursed. Meanwhile, in their economy, the money he has spent is a lot of money. It's a lot of money, even if it is 100 or 200 Ghana cedis. It's a lot of money in their economy. Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, the MP for North Tongue, is asking government if it is possible, they should delay paying salaries to, political appointees and people in government and use it to take care of these people. Let's see if that also is feasible and works. When I saw the little kids, I was very, very disturbed. But suddenly, something dawned on me that they are supporting their grandma. How many of you have thought about it to go and support your parents? We've left them to be on their own. Is that what society should be? Too much is normalized in this country, and you are surprised. Some 10 kids have just drowned, and we treat it as normal. Look at what happened in Ashaman. We treat it as normal. We are moving on with life. Shouldn't we? One person dies in the US, it's through the wrong way, and we organize funerals in Ghana. We'll take a break. When we return, we have Professor Kweku Asare, Stephen Kweku Asare, joining us to begin a special discussion on removing the impediments for dual citizens, Ghanaians who have taken on the citizenship of another country. The Constitution, through the amendment that happened on the 16th of December 1996, says that a citizen of Ghana may hold the citizenship of any other country in addition to his citizenship of Ghana. Without prejudice to whatever, then it says those people cannot be holders of any office specified in this clause. That is, you can't be an ambassador, you can't be a high commissioner, you can't be secretary to the cabinet, you can't be chief of defense staff or any service chief, you can't be inspector general of police, you cannot be commissioner of customs, you cannot be director of immigrations, you cannot also be an MP, and all sorts of things. In fact, the list has been increased and continues to be increased. The recent one was with the Special Prosecutors Act. You cannot be a special prosecutor or the deputy if you are a dual citizen. You hold Ghanaian citizenship and has taken on the citizenship of another country in addition. In fact, you cannot sit in the Supreme Court as a judge. We'll be right back to ask what the sense is and why it is now a subject for debate. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. The issue of dual citizenship and abolishing the prohibition on dual citizens has come to the fore this week because John Mahama said, I will amend the Constitution to allow dual citizens to be parliamentarians. Dual citizen amendments, we are told, will threaten the country's sovereignty. We'll try to appreciate that, understand what exactly it is meant. And we are now told, if you didn't know, that there's already a bill that is going through the motions. We'll tell you how long that bill has been there. The man who has been the brain behind the push joins us on by Zoom. Professor Stephen Kweku Asare, University of Florida. He is also with the CDD, Democracy and Development Fellow in Public Law and Justice. He's a member of the Florida Bar. Later, we'll be joined by Professor Kojo Appiagyei-Tua, Associate Professor, School of Law, University of Ghana, Legon, and Dr. Benjamin Kumbo, Visiting Scholar, University of Ghana, School of Law, as we deal with this and the other issues. But first, let's begin a lecture, Dual Citizenship Lecture 101 with Professor Kweku Asare. Prof, thank you very much for making time to join us this morning. I know it's, what time will it be where you are? Hello, Prof. Please unmute your mic. Hello, Professor Asare.
Good morning, Samson. Sorry about the glitch. I think I'm unmuted now.
That's all right. So what time is it where you are?
Good question. I think it's about 4 o'clock, maybe 5.
We put you through this all the time. Thank you very much for your commitment to this country.
Thanks for having me. I enjoy being with you on the program, and I enjoy exchanging ideas.
Right. So now tell us, What is the wisdom that went into the prohibition of dual citizens holding certain offices in this country? And what is the new wisdom that is now leading to the possible removal of all those, prohibitions?
You mentioned that there's a bill in Parliament already. The bill has gone through gazetting. It's been published twice in the Gazette as required by the Constitution. It's been introduced into Parliament, and consistent with the Constitution, it's been referred to the Council of State. The Council of State has given its advice. And so the next stage is the second reading, followed by the third reading. At each reading, there's a vote, and for the bills to pass or for the repeal of the articles that we want to repeal to pass, we need about 183 votes. I believe that is a significant piece of legislation that is in Parliament for a variety of reasons, because of the substantive things that it seeks to do, but also because of the process. It's, to my knowledge, the first time that a private member's bill is being used to amend the Constitution, and the bipartisanship surrounding the process has been beautiful. The Speaker is to be commended for his leadership. The majority and minority sides are to be commended for their bipartisan approach to this. The Council of State has evaluated the bill and in its wisdom has given the advice. I heard President Mahama giving his support for the bill. And of course, in July 2019, the current president also indicated that he supports such a bill, Samson. Now, when you spoke, you talked about Article 8.2, but you didn't mention Article 94.2a, which is actually the bigger problem. And I don't know whether you are seeing my screen, Samson.
Yes, we can see. So go ahead.
There are currently 4 laws enabled by 3 distinct sources of power that provide 2 distinct bases of public office holding exclusions. And it's important that we separate them. We have the constitutional burdens, which is Article 94.2a, and that is, as I say, pursuant to constituent power, and that is not about dual citizenship, that is allegiance-based. And then we have Article 8.2, which is pursuant to constituted power, and that is dual citizenship-based. The important point there is it is due to constituted power. That basically means it is an amendment. It is an amendment of the original Constitution compared to constituent power, which means Article 94.2a was always in the Constitution, and Article 8.2 is what I call the first amendment. In Ghana, our first amendment is Article 8 that deals with dual citizenship, because prior to the amendment, dual citizenship was not even allowed. And so Article 8.2 reviewed the arguments for outlawing dual citizenship and said, no, look, these arguments do not hold water. Let us amend the Constitution and let us allow dual citizenship. And then we have the statutory burdens, which is Section 16.2 of the Citizenship Act, and then Section 13.1a of the Office of Special Prosecutor Act. Section 16.2 is dual citizenship based, and Section 13.1a is allegiance based. Now, what is the effect of each of these laws? One, Article 94.2a, it is very deceptive when you read Article 94.2a, because it talks about a person who owes allegiance to a country other than Ghana is not qualified to be an MP. That is a very important provision, because qualification to be an MP is central to representative government and is extra to citizenship, a person who is not qualified to be an MP is also not qualified to be many things. One of them would be the Speaker of Parliament, and then that person is also not qualified to be on the executive. So, for instance, they cannot be president and vice president. They cannot be ministers of state, deputy ministers, and cabinet. They cannot be members of the constitutional bodies, including the Electoral Commission, the Public Service Commission, the NCCE, the Lands Commission, and then the Regional Lands Commission. So it's very important. And then lastly, if you are disqualified from being an MP, then technically you cannot be a founding member of a political party, you cannot be an executive member of a political party, and you cannot be a leader of a political party. So if we enforce Article 94(2)(a), the way we enforce it when people are seeking to enter Parliament, which I argue is a wrong thing, then even if you take the diaspora branches of the various political parties, dual citizens are not supposed to be executive members under Article 55(8). Then there is Article A2. Article A2 is straightforward. It is about dual citizens. It says that a person who is a dual citizen cannot be the following offices that are enumerated here and which you read out as well. No need to belabor the point. Then we have Section 16(2). Remember, if you go back to Article A2, when the Constitution was amended, this is the First Amendment. Under the First Amendment, there's a stipulation that Parliament can add any office to the list of positions that dual citizens cannot hold. And pursuant to that power, Parliament passed Section 16(2) of the Citizenship Act and added the following offices, which you have read and which I'm not going to go over again. And finally, the Office of Special Prosecutor Act, Parliament also added that a person who owes allegiance to a country other than Ghana cannot be a special prosecutor. So we need to make sure that we understand that we are talking about either dual citizenship or allegiance. And in my opinion, the two things cannot mean the same thing, because in law, as you know, there's what we call the principle of meaningful variation or the principle of consistent usage.
All right.
And that basically means if you say dual citizen, it means dual citizen, but then if you use another term, that term cannot also then be construed as meaning dual citizen. Now, let's look at the reasons that people normally give for why dual citizens should not hold office. First, they say that they have divided loyalties. Second, they say that they will be confused or conflicted when it comes to war or diplomacy or extinguishing fire and so on and so forth. See, for instance, the case that I sent to court in 2012. They say they can chop money and run away to their other country. They say they want to eat their cake and have it. They say they will compete unfairly against politicians. They say they will take jobs away from mono citizens. They say they are not full Ghanaians. And they say you cannot serve two masters. Samson, if you look at the list, you will see that this is an old and discredited argument, because the same arguments that I recited were the arguments that were used in the first place to outlaw dual citizenship in the 1992 Constitution. However, Parliament revisited this problem and said, look, these reasons do not hold water, and therefore let us amend the Constitution and allow people to hold other citizenship. So basically, these are arguments that have been rehashed and that were sometimes previously rejected. Second, experience has disconfirmed the fears. Why do I say that? Well, because since 1996, when we passed the First Amendment, we've been waiting for these things that dual citizens are supposed to do, and nothing has happened. We haven't seen any dual citizen betray the country. We haven't seen any dual citizen eat his cake and have it. We haven't seen any dual citizen serving two masters and so on and so forth. So we've had a natural experiment, and we have longitudinal data from 1996 to now to show that these fears are not just hypothetical, but they indeed have not materialized. Third, there's this question of divided loyalties. Samson, when you look at the list that we looked at and the positions that dual citizens have been excluded from, it's hard to understand how divided loyalties apply to many of the positions. For instance, are we arguing that the special prosecutor will not be able to go after corrupt people because of their shared citizenship of a foreign country? The reality, Samson, is that most professionals have different loyalties, including to tribe, including to religion, and so on and so forth, but can discharge their professional obligation without allowing these allegiances to get in their way. In fact, this is the argument that people use when somebody with political affiliation is appointed to go and serve on the Electoral Commission. They argue that, well, merely because the person has a political affiliation and merely because the person votes doesn't mean he cannot be a professional and he cannot discharge his duties with professionalism. With respect, the same arguments hold here. And then another important point is that there is actually data on this. Somebody actually studied this with Swiss nationals and found out that all the fears about divided loyalties really hold no water whatsoever. Then they talk about the person can misappropriate funds and run away. Well, this argument understates the country's ability to use the mutual legal assistance framework to go after criminals. Let's note that foreigners in Ghana are not even free to come here to commit crimes and run for shelter in their countries, because we can go after them, and therefore we can go after someone who is a Ghanaian and who absconds with our money. There are ways to go after that. In any event, if that were the case, the obvious solution is not an extreme ban on everyone, which becomes overbroad, but rather we need to place misappropriation controls so that people are not actually misappropriating funds. Then there is the cake argument. That one is one that I don't understand, because it almost assumes that people go to public office to eat some cake, and therefore they don't want other people to come and eat that cake and then somehow have it. I don't understand that argument. What we are talking about is public service, not eating cake. And so this argument I don't find credible. Then there's the fair competition argument. The fair competition argument also lacks merit, because it is the appointer, the person who is making the appointment, it is the voter who would have the decision right to hire citizens for public office. A dual citizen cannot force himself on anyone. And then some people say, well, dual citizens, they are fractional citizens. They are half-baked Ghanaians. There's no such thing as a fractional citizen. If you are Ghanaian, you are Ghanaian. It doesn't matter that you are a citizen of another country. You are 100% Ghanaian, and you are 100% a citizen of that other country. Remember that Ghanaian citizens have the same duties under the Constitution. The Constitution does not say that if you are mono-Ghanaian, you have more responsibilities or higher duties than someone who is a dual citizen. So we must treat all our citizens equally. And then there's this notion of serving two masters. And again, that is a problematic view of the problem, because citizenship should not be viewed as a master-servant relationship. It's more about a reciprocal rights and duties to the state. These Ghanaians, when appointed or elected, will not be serving two masters, because they must relocate and reside in Ghana before their nomination or appointment, and they will be serving only in Ghana. They will be serving only in Ghana, and they will be serving as professionals with professional obligations. They will take oath of office, and they will be bound by their oath of office. Now, another variant of the serving the two masters argument is posited in 1815 by the US Secretary of State George Bancroft. He noted that nations should as soon tolerate a man with two wives as a man with two countries, as soon bear with polygamy as that state of double allegiance. Well, this view of polygamy and double allegiance is not one that is accepted by all cultures. In fact, in our culture, polygamy is allowed by some sectors. And my better analogy is that one's allegiance to a wife does not diminish their allegiance to their mother. Now, in any event, you can see that all these reasons and arguments that I'm putting forward are entirely speculative and are not based on any empirical reality. Similar hypothetical and speculative concerns may be raised to disqualify just about everyone from holding any position. So, for instance, you can easily say, well, if a person is poor, he should not be given public office because his poverty might compel him to steal. But disqualification should be based on real actions, such as conviction for crime, rather than mere suspicion that one may act in some unspecified, undesirable way merely because of their status, proclaim that, and then enact that into law by penalizing them even before they've done the thing that you said they could do. Now, so we have debunked all the arguments that they put forth about why dual citizens should not hold office. Now, let me give you my reasons why I think dual citizens should be allowed to hold public office. My first ground is economics. Ghana is a net exporter of skilled labor, and we have to be aware of that. And we have to have return-friendly policies that attract these skilled labor and their wealth back to the country. A repeal of the law that is allowing people who are dual citizens to hold public office would encourage and stabilize both remittances and return migration. Furthermore, it will facilitate the use of vehicles such as the diaspora bond, which countries like Nigeria and Israel have put to good effect. But the reason they put to good effect is they've not categorized their dual citizens as disloyal. They have embraced them. And by embracing them, it's much easier to then go to them and say, well, come and invest in the country, buy diaspora bonds, and so on and so forth. Second, I have Republican grounds as a justification for the repeal. Under that, I know that the right to fully participate in the public space is the asset test of citizenship. If you can't do certain things, then you shouldn't be called a citizen. So, for instance, what is the difference between a citizen and an alien? Well, a citizen can vote, an alien cannot vote. A citizen can sit in parliament, an alien cannot sit in parliament. A citizen can be part of the executive, an alien cannot be. If you have a citizen and the citizen cannot do all those things that we enumerated, then what you have created is not really a citizen, you've created a fractional citizen. It's not dual citizen, it's a fractional citizen. Second, it aligns with our constitutional duties. I've already explained that because that duty is imposed on all citizens, not some citizens. Third, it avoids a situation where we have classes of citizens, some with supra rights and others with sub rights. We need all our citizens to have equal rights, have one vote, allowed to be voted for, and so on. Third, there's a public interest argument, and ex-President Mahama mentioned this in his interview the other time. We have our brain trust all over the world, and we should be able to tap into that brain trust, similar to the way we select our black stars. We don't ask whether you are a dual citizen or not. We ask, are you a Ghanaian? And if you are a Ghanaian and you are very good at playing soccer, we put you in the Black Stars. Kevin Boateng, he goes and he performs, and we are all happy. We are not worried that if there's a penalty and Kevin Boateng has to play it against Germany, somehow because he's also a German, he's going to somehow take the ball to throw. No. When you wear the jersey, you are a professional. You are a professional, and you will do your job accordingly. I also know that most of the excluded positions are technocratic and should be based on skills, knowledge, education, experience, and training, or what I call STEET over here. We need meritocracy, not some ambiguous loyalty that nobody can define and nobody can tell you what it is. And I've already noted that professionalism trumps primitive allegiance. So I'm an attorney. If a client who is not a Ghanaian hires me to go and sue the government of Ghana, I'm not going to say, well, I'm a Ghanaian and therefore I'm not going to do my professional work. No professional thinks that way. You are hired to do a job, and you are able to set aside your allegiance to your family, your allegiance to your tribe, your allegiance to your religion, your allegiance to your country, and do a professional job. That is why, Samson, Ghanaians, Supreme Court justice and other justices are able to go to other countries to sit on their Supreme Court and sometimes to even serve as the Chief Justice of those countries. So both in Gambia and in Kenya, we've had Ghanaian justices who actually went to their courts and presided as Chief Justice.
Presently,
they were not worried because this is a technocratic position, and they have confidence.
Prof, it's not only a matter of the past. As we speak, there are Ghanaian judges who are both judges in the courts in Ghana and in the Gambia.
Precisely. And yet, in our own country, a Ghanaian who just happened to also have the citizenship of another country cannot sit on our Supreme Court. And this actually discourages people, some of the people who have dual citizenship, some of the judges who have dual citizenship. They don't aspire to go to the Supreme Court because they don't want to trade their other citizenship to sit on the Supreme Court. So we are hurting ourselves. Sometimes the president wants to appoint somebody, but he can't appoint that person because of that law. Now, I've also mentioned that professionalism trumps primitive allegiance. And then the last point under the public interest is that the repeal of the law will arrest a potentially explosive exclusionary tool. And what do I mean by that? Look, if we look to our neighbors to the west, that is Cote d'Ivoire, they had a civil war. The first civil war was triggered because of this citizenship issue. Alassane Ouattara was being disqualified from holding the office of president because allegedly his father came from Burkina Faso. And that was enough to cause that first civil war. There are examples of that all over Africa. And I cite an example of somebody like Kenneth Kaunda, who basically was the founder of Zambia. But in 1996, they wanted to disqualify him from public office because allegedly his mom was from Malawi. Why are we doing this to ourselves? Why can't we take advantage of all our skills and put it to our use? Fourth, I think we need to move beyond rhetorics in this area. Repealing the law aligns our public office holding policies with our rhetoric on the diaspora. You know, we always have the Joseph Project, the year of the return, and so on. And when we do this, we even give some foreigners citizenship. Now, what are we telling the foreigners? That we are giving you citizenship and thereby making you a dual citizen. And in so doing, we are making you disloyal to Ghana and your other country. Why would we, on one hand, say that dual citizens are disloyal and yet happily confer citizenship on foreigners so that they become dual citizens and we exclude them from our political space? But if there are other countries who are thinking like us, then they would also be excluded from their political space. Fortunately, most countries do not think that way. I also mentioned that the repeal will fulfill our obligations under the African Charter, and will realize the constitutional promise of equal citizenship. And then finally, I mentioned that it restores the presumption of loyalty and innocence by refraining from penalizing based on suspicions and speculations. It also puts us in tandem with the rest of the world. Sierra Leone, UK, Nigeria, Canada, USA, Senegal, these are examples of countries that allow their dual citizens to hold any office. In fact, Samson, if you look at a country like UK, you don't even have to be a citizen of UK to sit in parliament. If you are a resident and you are a citizen of a Commonwealth country like Ghana, you can sit in their parliament. That is progressive. That is progressive. And I would argue later that Article 94(2)(a) is language that the British exported to all their colonies. So if you do a comparative review of constitutions, every Commonwealth country has this allegiance clause.
All right.
Ghana is the only country that interprets it as dual citizenship.
Okay.
And then we talked about the exclusions distracting from our liberal credentials. Let me make 2 quick points. First, this law, when it's repealed, does not entitle anybody to a job. It just restores their right to participate fully in the public space. Voters still will control who should represent them, and then the appointers still will decide who should be appointed. When to exclude, are there any circumstances under which somebody should be excluded from holding public office? I believe so. I believe so. But I would say this should be limited to situations where there are compelling, specific, articulable interest, not speculative interest.
All right.
And in any event, these restrictions must be narrowly tailored. And I would also argue that we should apply a conflict of interest framework where there is risk. That means you disclose or you exclude yourself from certain decisions if there is the potential that your other citizenship will be in conflict with your job that you are doing. But a blanket ban is too broad in my mind. Let me cite 2 Ghanaians, and then I'll start up. First is Obeda Samoa in 1968, when the same issue was being discussed. Here's what he said. I've heard the argument that if somebody who is what they refer to as half Ghanaian becomes president, he may owe allegiance to another country. Well, that may be so, but this is a matter which should be known to the Ghanaian electorate. And if the Ghanaian electorate choose to elect such a person, that's their business. I think this is an issue which should be left to the Ghanaian electorate, and that all Ghanaian citizens should be given equal rights. Obeda Samoa, 1968. I totally agree with that. And last, Kufuor basically says, now there are a lot of intermarriages among the races, and if a person comes to Ghana and marries a Ghanaian woman, if their children were made to suffer because of this intermarriage, then I do not see any justice in this. Therefore, if you are going to discourage people because of birth and preclude them from occupying high positions in our society, we will not be in conformity with civilization and natural justice. Thanks, Samson.
Thank you very much. Excellent. And that is detailed and brilliant. Now, Professor Kweku Asare, making that presentation to us in the last 30 minutes. He's going to stay on. We'll hear from our guests in studio and 2 other professors, and then return to Prof on that critical question that moves President Mahama to suggest or to make a promise that the prohibitions will be removed. Remember the Jachi Kwesing situation? We'll be asking Prof, how is one a dual citizen? A citizen of Ghana and another country, and yet can be said not to owe allegiance to a country other than Ghana, which is the issue. And he says that he is prepared to accept a certain exclusion, very limited. What are the circumstances under which he will accept that kind of exclusion. We'll take a quick break, return. Dr. Asasare is right here in the studio. Professor Pierre and Dr. Benjamin Kumbo will also join us later. We'll be right back.
The people of Asin North elected a person to represent them in parliament. This government has manipulated the judiciary in such a way that they've injuncted the member of parliament for Asin North. So even though he's the elected member, he cannot perform the duties of an MP. That is a gross injustice, and it's an affront to our democracy. But I want to assure the people of Ghana, and I want to assure the people like Jechi Kwesin, that is our member of parliament for Asin North, that when NDC comes into power, we are going to clarify that constitutional provision that compels them to give up their foreign citizenship before they contest elections. A country's human resource is its best resource, and we happen to have about 3 million of our citizens abroad. They've acquired experience, they've acquired different talents. And why would we have a law that says that if you want to come and be an MP in Ghana, you must give up your other citizenship? Meanwhile, we have a dual citizenship law. We're going to clarify it. They can come and stand for parliament. They can come and hold office in Ghana. They don't have to give up their other citizenship to be able to hold those offices.
Right, so let's get to hear from Dr. Asasante and Professor Kwadwo Etia what they have to say about this new wave and move. Remember, it's a private members' bill that is being talked about as the one in Parliament. From what I know about it, it's taken quite a long time, and it didn't really occur to me as if there was a commitment to pass it, even though the talk that you are hearing after President Mahama said he will do it suggests that there is a commitment. Well, let's see a bit more of it. Now, Doc, what's your view on this issue? They say lawyers, when we go to court, we must not necessarily, have sympathies with the matter that we represent. We just do our professional work. But I went to court to represent Ghanaians abroad on the ROPA, the Representation of the People Amendment Act, 2006. We passed the law in 2006 and said we allow Ghanaians who are abroad the same right as any other Ghanaian to vote in our elections. But we never implemented it. So these Ghanaians went to court in 2017, and the court upheld their rights, that beyond just putting it in our law, it was their right, and gave the Electoral Commission 1 year within which to take a constitutional instrument to Parliament to prescribe how it should be done. In the process, in doing that case, I discovered that there have been 2 different occasions, years, when Ghanaians living abroad, their contribution, remittances to Ghana, and those are remittances that have been tracked, not the ones that they give to a friend to come and give to somebody. Those that have been tracked 2 times, and even almost a 3rd time, they had contributed more than we generated locally, revenue. Those abroad generated more than we generate home. At a point, they were giving us more than we get from our cocoa. And I paused and asked myself, what's going on? I don't know where you stand.
Right. Samson, thanks for the opportunity. This is a very interesting topic. Interesting in the sense that there are a number of perspectives that, if they explain very well, it will liven up the conversation and then get people understand it the way it ought to be. Dual citizenship is not a bad idea. It is not. Because if you look at the thrust of the argument in there, it brings in a whole lot that today's world you can do without.
Right.
But people like us, my view is that there are certain critical positions that I believe somebody with a dual citizenship should not, occupy. And I'll go ahead to explain them. But I'll begin my submission by asking questions. That those who believe that dual citizenship is a good idea and that it should be made possible for everybody who has that, who is in that bracket to assume any position within the political space, I want them to also help me to understand this. Why can't also they extend the conversation to include the presidency? That, yes, if you believe that a dual citizen can be an IGP, can be the CDS, can be director of immigration, why not the president? That question should occupy their attention. Another one is that, why can't we have people with dual citizenship being full-blown military officers or police officers? Why? That conversation must also agitate their minds. I'm saying this because there are good reasons why in all this we have excluded the presidency. Critical because there are certain things that we hold dear to our hearts when we are dealing with government and we want to deal with the state. If you look at other jurisdictions which people cite that, oh, it's happening here, it is a good thing here, in other jurisdictions it exists. One of the reasons why those things exist there is that institutions exist, and I'm talking about strong institutions that work. So monitoring and maintenance of the institution is top-notch. So if, for instance, you are a minister who have a dual citizenship and you are supposed not to do ABC, there is a whole system that will monitor you so that you don't cross the line. Is it the case in Ghana that we have the institutions which are strong enough to be able to help us to arrive at where we're supposed to have? If you also look at some of the positions, especially the key positions such as the IGP, the CDS, and the rest of them, even if you serve that office honestly, leave the office, and you want to take up certain responsibilities, you are required by writing to furnish the government of the day about your activities, and then they go through and give you the green light. That condition is there. Why is it there? It tells us that there's more to it, not necessarily the economic argument and the rest of them. But let's come back to governance. Governance, simply put, is how we made use of economic and political resources to make life better for human beings. All right? And you cannot do this without holding certain things dear to your heart. And that is why in governance, secrecy is critical. And you being a lawyer, you are very familiar with secrecy laws that exist. Why are they there? Is to protect a certain interest. So in governance, secrecy is important. Interest, the state interest is important. That is why in order to prevent these things from abuse, there are laws that are, drafted to safeguard interest there. You see the conflict of interest, law, making sure that we are human beings. We will be confronted with a situation where we benefit from both ends. And then when it happens that way, it puts you into a conflict of interest situation when you are supposed to be a dual citizen in this regard. At that point, where would your allegiance or loyalty be? Obviously, where you benefit more will likely to hold the sway. So there is a law that regulates you, right? If you look at this, and then you also tie in to the issue of allegiance. Allegiance is so critical in governance because it is nothing but a civil service tradition that ensures that there is loyalty and honesty in the discharge of public duty, right? So all these things are put into the system to make sure that things work and they work the way they ought to be. Let us look at this situation that you have a CDS, you have IGP, and the rest of the security CAFOs who have dual citizenship, and they are working with the president who is not a dual citizen. What is the situation here? We are made to believe that is in court. The president is working with foreigners. There are sensitive information within the security framework that should not go out to anywhere. But
for example, information about what?
Information about the security of the state. There are certain specific information like it hasn't come to mind readily, but there are a number of them.
Yeah, because the thing is, anytime the issue comes up, this is the argument that is used about sensitive information, particularly regarding security.
Yeah.
The way I like to help us to demystify is to ask the question I just asked you.
Yes.
I ask for example, and people will talk about our armory and what have you. And I ask the question, even today, our army is being trained by foreigners to combat terrorism.
Yes.
Most of what we have in our armory is either given to us for free or we take it from people and they know what they have given us. So what's the fear?
Yeah. Let me give you a supply with example of that information. Information about declaration of war. If there's a situation where Ghana has to declare war against another country, and you have CDS who have planned this with the president, would you want this information to be in the hands of somebody who will dual citizenship with that of the country that you are going to declare war with? We are human beings. Let us not pretend. It is natural that where I feel so strongly that I have some benefit, I will be able to
Is there not the potential for a mono-citizen, someone who doesn't have allegiance to another country? Sorry, I said allegiance because I have come to understand the differences between who a dual citizen is and the question of allegiance. The two don't appear to be the same. Now, is it not, are the temptations not the same for somebody who is a mono-citizen to betray their country?
Yes, but there we are saying that all these things, the potential for these things to blow up in our face is very much dependent on the institutions that we have and the kind of orientation, socialization we have walked people through. All right, is it the case in Ghana? We are not talking about any other country, but Ghana. Is it the case that our people have the socialization, the right attitude to be able to decide this thing perfectly the way we ought to be? We have seen instances here where security people plan swoop, and only to go there and realize that there are security men who are dealing with the criminals.
No dual citizens are involved.
All right. Yes. So we are saying that institutions are critical. The states that we are talking, that they are going full hog and implementing them, they have institutions that set the tone for these things to exist. Not only that, they have the right attitude through orientation, socialization, and all that. We are saying that, yes, that is why my intro was that it's not a bad idea, but let us watch.
Which do you prefer?
Yeah.
An obviously corrupt security person or a dual citizen or one who has allegiance to another country and has integrity?
You see, all these things were things that, if you look at the report on the committee of experts, all right, this is one of the things.
That's for the Constitution.
Yeah, for the Constitution. One of the things that bothered or occupied the attention. They were very much alive.
Doc, sorry, but the copy of the Constitution you are holding,
I
can say without a doubt that this is one of the first copies of the Constitution when it was published.
Yes, yes.
You should see the color and the cover.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. They were alive with some of these challenges. And so if you look at their debate, they look at it and then they were able to grant that dual citizenship in this Constitution with the argument that there are economic benefits, there are economic refugees, and the rest of them, which you have alluded to, about the fact that, transfer of money into the country help to build. But they caution us. If you read, I want to read with your permission, that we do not want an occasion where allegiance to Ghana is shared with allegiance to some other country. They were so emphatic that they believe that there is something in here that we need to examine and be critical about. And that is where I take my strength from. So I believe that, yes.
Has a lot not changed since 92?
A lot has changed, but have you also, can you say, without fear of contradiction, that you have institutions that have the capacity, the wherewithal to support this venture?
Not long ago, our Supreme Court said that if the president traveled, it meant his office is vacant.
Yes.
Should you be saying that when the president travels, he's the president?
Yeah.
Where he is, what he's doing it as a president. And in today's technological world, it's just by the tap of the button.
That is,
and there's no even sign that he has traveled.
It brings you to institutions and technology and the rest of them. The US president travels. And within the Air Force One, he's able to do a whole lot around the world. But let us also look at this sensitive position that I'm talking about and have a feel of what I have under my sleeves. If you take, for instance, an ambassador who is a dual citizen, and he's supposed to preside over, information about state-to-state relationship regarding his country and other countries. What is the point of having a diplomatic bag? What is the point? All right. Foreign policies are developed based on some of these high level of confidence that you take information from where you reside and then you pass it on through a diplomatic bag.
Is it resolved? Is it resolved if the person is Canadian, is Ghanaian and acquires a Canadian citizenship, and you don't take them to Canada, you take them elsewhere?
It doesn't matter what.
So he doesn't become ambassador to Canada, but to Nigeria.
Yes.
High Commission.
Yes, I am saying, my position is that I'm not against dual citizenship per se, but I'm saying that this path we are charting, we should be careful about it. Careful about it.
And let me bring in Prof. Appiah. Prof, thank you very much for your patience. Listening to Professor Kukwasare for 30 minutes and still hanging on there to join the discussion. I don't know where you stand with this. And we will come to the question about the differences between allegiance and the dual citizenship. Now, it does appear that the two major political parties are now fighting for praise for who it is that will remove the prohibitions against Ghanaians who have other citizenship and want to participate fully at certain levels of our political and economic life of the state. Please unmute your mic.
I have. Can you hear me? Okay. It's been an interesting discussion, and I think it's a topic that its time is due for us to bring a conclusion to. And it's interesting you make the point that now both parties are trying to claim the glory for fighting to remove those barriers which have been placed in the way of dual citizens in assuming certain positions in the country. So it tells you how much the issue has been politicized. When one party is in power, it tries to use the Article 94 to a provision to clamp down or to put impediments in the way of the other party. And when the other party is also in power, it tries to use it in a different way. But it's interesting that now they seem to come to the point that we all have to, let this impediment be removed. Of course, the question of citizenship is a political question. If you go back into history, if you look at the question of nationality, even some are claiming that today, because the whole idea of citizenship has moved from the municipal plane to become an international law issue, a human rights issue, we should not even talk about nationality, but we should talk about citizenship. Because the idea of a national and an alien, which used to be the means of dividing or differentiating somebody who is not a member of a country from another person was used sometimes in a discriminatory manner when you go back to issues of having access to a visa, a passport, and all that. So indeed, it's a political question, but like I'm saying, it is now not merely in the realm of a country relating it to sovereignty and saying that I have the power within my territorial boundaries to determine who should be a citizen or not. But because of globalization, because of the changing nature of relations between countries and so on, and most importantly, because of the fact that it is no more states that are the predominant actors in international law. We have citizens being recognized as major actors. There is a need to, for countries having no choice, probably around the past 20 years or so, especially after the fall of the Berlin Wall, for dual citizenship to be given a bigger stake. And we even have situations where some may become a citizen of another country without having stepped in that country or without having gone through certain processes and procedures, simply because it is not about allegiance or anything. It's about economic factors. If I can raise 10 million, even 1 million, and to invest in another country, I could become a citizen of that country. And if you connect that to the remittances that dual citizens bring into the country and other expertise that they have and other contributions they make into the country, then the whole issue of who should be a citizen or who can be a dual citizen assumes a status where it is over-exaggerated and it's not giving the critical push that should ensure that we benefit from the role of dual citizens in the development of the country. So that politicization should certainly end. And I'm glad that the debate has shifted to that stage. And I think that we should also look at the judiciary. They have a big role to play in this, because it is clear that, as Professor Sari has properly articulated, there's a difference between Article 8.2 and Article 94.2a. One is talking about citizenship, one is talking about dual allegiance. And citizenship and allegiance are related one way or the other, but they could be different things. It also brings to the question the whole idea of patriotism. And so we need to draw the lines carefully. My take is that I'm all for adopting a human rights-based approach to this question. And if we look at it from that angle, we can see that a lot of injustices, a lot of biases have been perpetrated against dual citizens. And I'm glad Professor Sari was able to debunk the arguments that have been put across to make a claim why dual citizens cannot hold certain positions. And so in this regard, but we need to be careful though, because certainly there are some few positions that may justify limitations as to whether dual citizens can occupy that position. I'm not in a position to identify key areas now, but if you look at citizenship laws, in a number of countries, they are categorized. They are different.
But Prof, let's face it. So, for example, our present law, you can't be the fire chief. What could be the reason for that? That you intentionally burn the country or what?
As for those,
you can't be head of the lands commission. Why you sell the lands to foreigners?
No, I think those examples or the list that we find in Article 527 is a non-starter. It sounds ridiculous in a lot of ways, and I think that we need to properly find, do a debate, a discussion, and identify which areas we think, strictly speaking, should be reserved for mono citizens.
Is it not equally a compelling argument to suggest that if you love Ghana so much that you want to be in the Supreme Court, you want to put your services at the Supreme Court, perhaps when you are here you can also help one of our universities. Maybe you have access to getting a lot of funding for universities, as happens outside so that universities don't depend too much on the state and so on. You simply just relinquish your citizenship to that country and come, instead of wanting to be here and there at the same time. Does that question also not hold?
It does. And I think that, like I'm saying, we are losing a lot by placing those barriers in the way of dual citizens, because there's a lot we can benefit from. And the disadvantages or maybe mainly security factors which are mentioned as a basis to restrain certain dual citizens from occupying certain positions are very limited. And if you look at our laws as it stands now, the argument has already been made that it is not targeting Ghanaians who have acquired foreign citizenship. It is rather the opposite. Foreigners who have acquired Ghanaian citizenship and who we are not sure about whether the reason for acquiring a citizenship. You may do all the background checks, but there could be some other factors or some maybe criminal record or some other reason that they want to be a citizen. So for such people, it's a little bit more difficult to determine the rationale for their becoming Ghanaian citizens. Of course, some are clear in case of marriage and so on. And so that is where you may say that maybe the person has performed some other function for his or her country before becoming a dual Ghanaian citizen. So certain positions should be denied such a person. Okay. But it shouldn't be Ghanaians who have acquired foreign citizenship and want to occupy certain positions. Even with that argument, we need to be careful, because otherwise we could end up discriminating against such persons.
Well, when Professor Kukwasari mentioned the AU, or is it, yes, he mentioned an AU protocol of sort. I said, well, thank God you are on the show. For example, in the same manner, the Ghanaians who are abroad and their right to vote, we pass the law, but we're not doing it. And often you hear the argument that, oh, it is too expensive to do. The limited ones that we do in our missions for Ghanaians who are on mission, students who are on scholarship abroad, that one, they say, oh, it's on a low key, it's not much. So we can do that comfortably. But expanding it to Ghanaians who live abroad will be expensive. And then I pause and ask myself, Nigerians vote in their elections living right here in Ghana, and we supervise it for them. What is it that they have that we don't have that we can't do it? And in this time and age, must it always be the procurement attitude that we must procure some logistics and go and put in a certain place, or it should be a thing about leveraging on, technology? So do you think that from this kind of attitude that we have, we will ever do what we now are saying we are likely to do, removing the prohibitions on dual citizens?
Well, I think that it's a question of political will. And if you look at the issue of whether Ghanaians can vote from outside, or dual citizens can vote, it is not that expensive. We can leverage on technology to be able to do this and do it effectively. At the same time, even if it is, democracy is expensive. And because at the end of the day, the benefits that you get out of it will outweigh the cost implications involved. So you do it all the same for the sake of promoting peace, development, and so on. And so even if it's an expensive thing, we have to do it. But the fact that others are doing it indicates that we don't have any excuse but to do it as well. And coming down to whether we will really ensure that this debate we're having now and will be implemented, I think that at this stage we have no choice. And it's incumbent on both parties that they will not be continue to play politics with it. Because the debate came up again as a result of what President Mahama said. And it relates to the Yachikwesi case. we don't know if when they come to power and they have the majority in parliament, if that becomes the case, they will still be interested in pursuing it. But the point has come that we need to push that we have reached a threshold that we cannot continue to be on the other side of the fence, and we have to move to the other side and be on the same side with the majority of countries that allow for dual citizenship and allow for dual citizens to also hold certain supposedly sensitive positions.
Okay. Before the Jachikwe case, we recall that not too long ago, we put one of our citizens in prison because of a similar situation. Ademo Dramani Sakande.
That's right.
And they fell sick. It didn't matter that the people deemed him qualified and the best person to represent them in parliament. It didn't matter that he was serving them well and they were happy with him. What mattered to us as a country was that by the time he was registering to stand elections for them, he was holding the citizenship of the United Kingdom. Is it? Yeah, and that was a problem. That was all there was about it. So let's do it this way. I'll take a break. When we return, we'll bring Professor Kwaku Asare on briefly, and to now seek to distinguish make the distinction between dual citizen and the allegiance. And then we'll move on to the next subject about the security services that the politicians are promising will give us jobs for their supporters. The Ayawaso West Wuogon Commission found that was a problem and we needed to stop because the parties, once one party wins, they push a good number of their people into the army, into the police, into immigration, and it's becoming now a partisan security service. What's the danger in that? And what does the promise made by John Mahama also portend? Newsfile is live on your Joy News channel, Joy FM, Love FM, and our affiliates, including KTU Radio in Koforidua, ATL FM in Cape Coast, and many more of our affiliates. Remember that we have you covered as far as the NDC's delegate elections are concerned. Elections for MPs, as it were, parliamentary candidates, and the flag bearer of the party are concerned. We'll bring you everything that you need to know about it and how far it is going. The best political team, Evans Mensah, Winston Amwa, they are ready. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Kojo Yangsing will be leading the team to take over from me at 12 to continue with our comprehensive coverage of the NDC's presidential and parliamentary primary elections. Newsfile is live on Joy News channel, it's on Joy FM, it's on Love FM in Kumasi, and several dozens affiliates. It's also live, streaming live as well on your YouTube channel, and it's on the KTU Radio in Koforidua, ATL FM in Cape Coast. Thank you very much for keeping your dials with us, and my guests you've been listening to so far. Professor Kwaku Asare, University of Florida, CDD Development and Democracy and Development Fellow in Public Law and Justice. He's a member of the Florida Bar. Professor Kojo Appiah is Associate Professor, School of Law, University of Ghana, Legon. Dr. Kwame Asare, who took us to some history in the making of the Constitution as far as the Committee of Experts are concerned, is Senior Lecturer, Department of Political Science and Director, Center for European Studies, University of Ghana, Legon. We have difficulties establishing contact with Dr. Benjamin Kumbo, visiting scholar, University of Ghana School of Law, who was to also join us on the show. And I'm not surprised about what Dr. Asa Asante is doing. When we were discussing Boku, you saw I brought a book, a huge book here that looked very old. It was a collection of stories of many years that he put together and shared some of them with me to gain deeper insights into the Boko situation. So when he goes to the Committee of Experts reports, I'm the least surprised about it. Right. Professor Asare, the first, I know you want to make brief remarks, particularly in respect of the submissions made by Dr. Asa Asante. If you can do that within a minute, and then in not more than 5 minutes, we want to see what the distinctions are between dual citizenship and allegiance, which is a major, issue that comes up anytime this thing is raised. And I asked you the question earlier: how is one a dual citizen, a citizen of Ghana and another country, yet we can say that that person cannot be said to owe allegiance to a country other than Ghana?
Briefly on Prof's submissions, first, what he read from the Committee of Experts report, the committee outlawed, or the assembly outlawed, dual citizenship. But in 1996, they reviewed the work and found out that that was too much, and that is why dual citizenship has been allowed. So that's what I call the First Amendment. So everything he read is not of relevance because it's been dated and we have moved on.
Is it rather not of relevance? Is it rather not the case that it is of relevance in pursuit of a reasonable, narrow opportunity?
It could be, but what I'm just saying that the Committee of Experts and the Assembly basically indicated that dual citizenship is too dangerous to be allowed. And all I'm saying is that in 4 years, we went back and said, no, that is way too much. Let's allow dual citizenship, because all of these fears that Prof was talking about are just hypothetical, and they are not something that we can use to outlaw dual citizenship. And we are now completing that evolution to say, look, once we have allowed dual citizenship and we have allowed them in our system for 30 years, it's now time to make another step, basically grant them the right to participate fully in the political space.
Okay.
The other thing that I wanted to talk about very quickly was that he mentioned that our institutions are weak. Come on, are institutions any weaker than that of Sierra Leone or Nigeria or Senegal? And they allow their dual citizens to participate fully in their political space. Look, I understand what Prof is saying, but I just want him to be a little modest when he's talking about other Ghanaians. Attributing this disloyalty to other Ghanaians, I believe, is a little too much. Look, if you don't trust dual citizens, in fact, if you don't trust a politician, then the answer in our democracy is not to vote for them. And so I would be very happy if Prof would say, look, because S is a dual citizen, I'm not going to vote for him. I have no problem with that. And finally, on the question of presidency, remember there's a specific article in the Constitution that says to be a president, you have to be a natural-born Ghanaian. So only natural-born Ghanaians can be citizens.
But Prof, does that not raise a real situation, practical? When he asks us the question, the CDS, IGP, they will sit in security meetings with the president. And if they do, doesn't that open us to the practical situation a challenge? Because matters of national security.
Yeah, because that's what I'm saying. There's the presumption that if you have the citizenship of another country, then somehow you cannot be trusted. and another presumption that if you don't have the citizenship of another country, then you can be trusted. I just don't think that there are any facts, there's any evidence, there's any logic behind that beyond just religion. I mean, it's like just, I believe that, and so it must be.
Okay.
That, to me, is not the way we make laws. You cannot make a law and say, well, I think poor people are going to be corrupt. Therefore, poor people should be restricted from holding public office. That is my point.
Thank you. In the next 5 minutes, tell us about how different it is as I ask the question.
Yeah. Now, it is important, very important, that even the question be framed properly. The question is not whether dual citizens owe allegiance to a country other than Ghana. No, that's not the question. The question is, what is the meaning of owing allegiance to a country other than Ghana as used in our constitution? That's what the question should revolve around. And that question, the clear answer is, it has nothing to do with citizenship. Why? Because in 1992, when the Constitution was promulgated, Article 94(2)A on allegiance was right in there, but dual citizenship was not allowed. So it is a little curious to say Article 94(2)A was meant to disqualify dual citizens, people who did not even exist in our political space. So we must do better and look for the real meaning of Article 94(2)A, rather than just say, well, a citizen owes allegiance, and therefore when I see allegiance in the Constitution, it must refer to citizenship. Using that analogy, then we can also argue that when a president takes the oath of allegiance, then he's taking an oath of citizenship. No, he's not taking an oath of citizenship. He's taking an oath of allegiance to defend, to maintain, and to protect the Constitution. That's what that oath of allegiance is. So now, once you understand that, then you have to figure out, well, what does it mean to say you owe allegiance to a country other than Ghana as used in our Constitution? The easiest way to answer that is to go to the 1968 Memorandum on the Proposals for a Constitution. And the answer is right there in paragraphs 416 to 418. They mention that the allegiance clause is there because of occupational hazards. They are trying to restrict people whose occupation are incompatible with sitting in the house. So the way to define allegiance under Article 94(2) is a person whose occupation requires a pledge of allegiance to a country other than Ghana, and which occupation is deemed naturally incompatible with sitting in parliament. What would be an example of that? Well, somebody who is spying or who is a spy for another country against Ghana. Good example will be Susudis and the swap of Piasa and Co., where Piasa and Co., who were mono citizens, were spying for the US and so were deported to the US even though they were not US citizens, and Susudis was repatriated. So spying. And then it was also, remember that allegiance is a feudal term. You can find it in the constitution of all Commonwealth countries. What it really means was, it was targeted at war, people who serve in the military of an enemy of a country. So things like that are the reason why we have Article 94(2)A. And then here I will give you 8 separate grounds for why I think they are different. One, as I mentioned, the principle of meaningful variation, right, tells us that a word or phrase is presumed to bear the same meaning throughout a text. So dual citizenship in Article A2 cannot mean the same thing as allegiance in Article 94(2). Number 2, I've already discussed it. Article 94(2)A predates Act 527, which is the first amendment, which allowed dual citizenship. Thus, Article 94(2)A cannot reasonably be referring to dual citizenship as a chronological matter. 3, I've mentioned the 1968 Memorandum on the Proposals for Constitution of Ghana, which informed the draft of the 1992 Constitution, expressly categorizes allegiance to a country other than Ghana as occupation or transaction related, not citizenship related. 4, case laws such as Bilson versus Rollins and others from other jurisdictions, several citations I can give, support the distinction between allegiance as a disqualifying event and citizenship. So if you read the Constitution of Canada, for instance, they have this article on allegiance because they were part of the Commonwealth. But in Canada, even though they have this provision on allegiance, you can be a dual citizen and sit in the Parliament of Ghana. Likewise, people don't realize that right after independence, all Ghanaians were dual citizens when we passed the Nationality Act. Why? Well, because before we passed the Nationality Act, Ghanaians were British citizens, British protected persons, British subjects, and Commonwealth citizens. Then when we passed our own nationality law, we all became dual citizens. So there are many Ghanaians who are dual citizens as a result of that colonial heritage. And everyone who was running Ghana in those days was a dual citizen, yet we survived. Now, I also want people to look at Article 94.2, not just the A, but Article 94.2, A to G, to see the character of things that are included in that article. You would see that the article should be applied to persons who have engaged in severe allegiance-based misconduct that has been adjudged to be a threat to the security of the state or otherwise inimical to its interest.
All right.
So if you read Article 94.2, it has things like it disqualifies people who have been convicted for high crime, for treason, for felony, and so on and so forth. Are we then saying that dual citizenship, which is a lawful status, is in the same category as these other things that are mentioned in Article 94.2? No, it couldn't be. In fact, anybody doing something lawful should not be penalized the way Article 94.2A penalizes citizens.
All right.
I've mentioned that the sheer breadth of exclusions, the number of positions that are excluded, suggests that allegiance should be construed narrowly to vindicate modern views of citizenship and constitutional values of equal citizenship. And then I've already talked about the 1957 Constitution. If you go to Section 25(2), it had a clause on allegiance, yet everybody was a dual citizen. And that right there should also tell them something. And then the last point, why the allegiance clause is found in the Constitution of all Commonwealth countries, successful use of the clause to disqualify a citizen from holding is very difficult, if not impossible, to find. That clause is something that we either interpret it carefully because it was a dormant clause.
Right.
Nobody even knew about Article 94.2A until we passed the law on dual citizenship. And then all of a sudden it's being misapplied to that.
Thank you very much, Professor Kwekwasari. And we're looking for the time when we will have you live around in town, and then we could sit here and do like a whole hour just one-on-one, bringing further light and elucidation on this subject. But please hang on there, don't leave yet. Professor Appiagyei has to take leave of us, and we want to hear him on the subject to which we are going to now before he can take leave of us. I have several comments on the question of dual citizenship and the allegiance question, some from very prominent citizens that I'll share with you. So don't go anywhere, just hang in there. Now, Professor Appiagyei, the President Mahama in his campaign spoke, he was very clear about it. We'll share the video shortly, that they will give jobs in the security to party people. The NPP's response is that, yes, we do this, but we do it quietly. You don't have to say it publicly. And I'll share also a reaction from the NPP's communications director, and you know that it's not me saying, but this is a clear admission. In fact, you can't run away from it. The commission, Ayawaso West Wuogon, had issue with this situation and cautioned against it. It said that party faithful are resettled through the national security establishment. their mere presence encourages opposition parties to counter their activities. National security agencies should be non-partisan and founded on an object's loyalty to the state. Partisan appointments into national security violates Section 15 of the Security and Intelligence Act, Act 526. Partisan appointments affect confidence in the security agencies. What do you make of this situation, and what should be done about it, Prof?
Thank you, Samson. This is a very worrying situation because we are jeopardizing the security of the state, and we are redefining national security to mean regime security. That is how I'll simply put it. And we also look at it from not as a security, just as a security issue, but as a securitization issue, where the political power imagines an existential threat and therefore uses the security apparatus to quell the situation or to justify why more money and more resources should go into security issues. And this extends to who should go into the security apparatus, that is party apparatchik and foot soldiers and so on. So it is a worrying trend because national security is something that should be based on professionalism, should be based on people who have the competence and the qualification. Imagine the Ayawasi Ogun situation where somebody has had 2 weeks of security training and he became part of the national security apparatus. And so it's interesting that NPP is saying we all do it, but we do it in secret. It is something that we need to all pay serious attention to, so that it's a question of national security, not regime security. And what Mahama said is condemnable, and what the NPP also said is condemnable. For example, I heard that the Delta Force and other elements in the NPP have been incorporated into...
It was a promise that was made to them. And when there was a delay in fulfilling the promise of sort of integrating them, so to speak, for want of a better word, we saw what they did. When appointments were made that were made outside of their membership, they went, and brutalized, humiliated the individual involved in Kumasi. And we saw what happened even in a courtroom in Ghana.
Yeah. So that's what the NPP, the NDC is now saying, that we will do political equalization, and they are saying it openly. And so it tells you about what goes on behind the scenes, which is now coming out, whether it's confession time or something. But to me, I think former President Mahama knows what he's saying. He's appealing to the base of the party to tell them that you vote for me, this is what I'm going to do for you. And so clearly, it is not a good sign. And I think we also need to look at it from how governments in power cozy it off with the soldiers and other security agencies. It all boils down to the fact that they'll be able to penetrate these agencies and brought in their people in there. So even when they do something wrong, referring to Ashama as a more recent incident, they are not ready to apply the whip and to ensure that discipline is maintained in the force. And that is a warning sign, because the security agencies are a critical component of our democratic system. They are able to check the excesses that governments make, so that they will protect the security of the state as a whole and protect our democracy. But if they are infiltrated and compromised, then there's another basis to worry about a key important element of ensuring the stability of our democracy being eroded.
Thank you very much for your time this morning. Professor Kojo Appiagyei, Associate Professor at the University of Ghana School of Law. We still have Dr. Asa Asante with us, and Professor Kwekwasari also on the line to help us to determine what ought to be done. So I'm asking the question to myself. Prof just said a while ago, this is what they do and it's condemnable. What they are saying is condemnable. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Are we saying we are okay with them if they hide and do it secretly? We certainly cannot be.
Certainly, we cannot endorse that. That position was actually wrong. And it's not the first time. It's gradually becoming a feature in Ghanaian politics. And it has all its effect on the political stability of this country. Let me take you a little back to history. These practices have found expressions in two ways. Sometimes they play the ethnic card within the security services, putting certain ethnic groups in there, or they make it also taking party people in. The history of it could be traced to long to Nkrumah's era, where Nkrumah was accused of having surrounded himself with his Nzima people, security capus, Ambrose, Derry, and the rest of them. They accused Kwame Nkrumah of having surrounded himself with a lot of security people who belong to the Nzima ethnic group. Rawlings' time, similar allegations were made against Rawlings that within the army, they've had a lot of people from a certain ethnic group, particularly Ewe, to the extent that the late MP, my late MP, Ejarikwe Labi, in the year 2000, filed a motion in Parliament that the way they were enlisting people into the army was based on a certain trend which was not reflective of regional balance. Even though that motion was defeated, but it brought to the fore that problem that really exists within the political space. Kufuor's time, such allegations were made, and Nana Akufo-Addo's time, we have seen this. If you look at these things within the body politics, right, one of the things that have brought these things sharply to sharp focus is the issue of law and ethics, right? If you look at, if you want to really put people into the security service, it's nothing but meritocracy and merit. People go in there because they qualify, they have the professional qualification, they have the competence, they have the experience and what have you. Any other consideration is no. But here you are, you see party people pushing their men in there, and the reason why they do this is one, for political expediency, that they can make use of them anytime they need them to create all manner of problems for the society, and also to satisfy their paymasters and the rest of them. More often than not, they use them also to terrorize society, abuse society, and these things, if it's not checked, is going to create all manner of problems. The dangers.
So, I'm going to hold on with the dangers. You come and want to outline them and ask what must be done. Even a commission's report has been ignored. And right after elections, we see what happens in this country. Is this thing really about just the security services? Don't we know in this town that it's not different for any public office? But what are we doing to the politicians? What are they doing to this country? Now, listen to the former president, what exactly he said. Then his aide, Joyce Bar Mutari, how she defended the circumstance. And Anyagba, the NPP's communications director, how he also, what he also said about it.
Let's be very, very realistic here. We should not in any way raise the bar for the National Democratic Congress. I'm sure that what we need to do is to put the NPP to the litmus test on all the key facets that they pledge to do upon assumption of office ever. You live here with me on corruption, on media freedoms or press freedom, on employment for persons of, without any discrimination, in terms of access, in terms of building a better economy, in terms of managing our health institutions, in terms of providing roads, water, electricity, all the things that you and I desire. The worst part is that same economy that we promised to better money, we have literally run aground. The country is currently bankrupt. So please, once we are in here, we know what we've gone through. We know what we have suffered. Look, I had a very, very, very interesting encounter of a young boy who gained admission into one of the uniform agencies. He was denied access largely because he was unable to prove the fact that he was a member of the New Patriotic Party.
Positioning and the posturing of saying that, something untoward has happened or something wrong has happened. And as a result of it, we are going to break the law. For me, I find that very laughable, and in building a democratic institution, we shouldn't be having this conversation. I think that the former president misspoke. If I were speaking for him, that would be my position, that he misspoke, and that is not what he intended. Try to explain and put a better spin on this, but to entrench your position to say that, yes, we say that and we mean it, I find it very disturbing. In making a proposition for a forward leadership, I think that the best posturing of the NDC and therefore the former president should be that these are things we observe to be wrong and we think that we can fix it, right? But it is not the case, in the case of police recruitment and the rest, that there is an intentional effort to recruit party people in a manner the president is suggesting in his speech.
Right. So John Mahama said, quote, our people, our branch executives' children, you just stand by. If we are distributing any jobs, if we are recruiting people into the police, so it starts actually with any jobs. People into the police, the army, the prison service, the fire service, and the immigration service. And guys, let's not play ostrich about this. The army, the police, prison service, fire service, immigration, national security, the parties, they just ship their guys into it every election cycle. So he says, we will recruit all of our young people too to go and work. So what did Haruna Idrisu have to say about this? He said MPP government was recruiting party supporters into the security services. Future NDC government will reverse the unlawful recruitment. So what has changed? Or two different people speaking. And we are not paying attention to the Ayawaso West Wegon, the eminent panel, Emil Short, Professor Justice Henrietta Mensah Bonsu. Why did we give them the job if we didn't mean to follow what they would say? Prof, what are the dangers?
The dangers are that, one, it leads to a situation where we tend to polarize the already volatile political system by putting in party apparatchiks into the security setup. We also create unnecessary tension within the country. Because sometimes when you see the activities, you and I witness the way people pounce on judges. A judge sitting doing her work, and you see groups like this pouncing, and nothing happens.
The group went to, I think, the harbor. They went to do something in Tema. Yeah. And a lawyer of such long standing, who was then the NPP's chairman, Freddie Blay, defended them and said they were preserving public property. They went there to, on their own, drive people out of the place. And he said they were doing a job that the Constitution expects them to do, preserve public property and defend public property.
When you do things of this nature, it leads to nothing but impunity. You open the floodgate for people to commit similar or other egregious offenses, simply because those who manage the political affairs of the state will always come into their defense. And some of these things go a long way to undermine, especially the core within the army. The army work as a uniform institution where they believe in their colors, the ranks, the command model work. So any other things that deviate from this create unnecessary problem for them. One of the reasons that Afrifa and Co. leveled again, reasons that the accusation they made against the Nkrumah government was some of that Nkrumah tried to CPify, that is CPification of the Ghana army, bringing a CPP branch within the army and all that.
CPification.
Yeah, CPification. That's what Okwe described in this book. CPification of...
I don't know what we can say of the current situation.
Then it's going to be MPPification of the security service. Once you have that, you divide the soldiers. You don't build a solid force that will stand and defend the country at all times.
Respect for command.
Yes. You said something, and I just want to chip in this. It also leads to some of these things. It strengthens what we call ethnic power relations within the state.
That's right.
And it goes beyond even the security services. You find it in all workplaces as a particular group of people, either from a political stock or from an ethnic group. And these things do not bode well for a democracy that has suffered a lot of injustice, a lot of problems that we are trying to nurture and protect at all times. And it also creates all manner of problems that undermine the stability of this country. Because as soon as you compromise the security of the country, you are already creating a fertile grounds for all manner of problems.
In your mind, what can we do to stop this now?
The way out, a number of suggestions that I want to make is that let us force political parties to put these things into their manifesto so that we can hold them to it. That's their policy, one way. You recall when we started experiencing this power outages and all that, the Doomsday era, groups such as AGI and Co. called, political parties, can you come over? Tell us your solution to these problems and put into the manifesto. Quickly, it began to feature in some of the manifestos, and today we are getting...
How are you going to police that? Already, Statistical Service tells us the unemployment situation is that bad. These people are Ghanaians first off. How are you going to police the process and say this person being brought here was a foot soldier doing this and he is earning his employment into the security service on account of the political affiliation?
We don't need to break heads on these things. The army leadership, they have a way of profiling everybody. They know who to select and how to select them. It's easy. If you leave them to do their work, obviously they will be able to fish out all these people and get those who are, without this coloration to be in the army.
The leaders complain only privately to some of us.
Yes.
They complain privately. They don't complain publicly.
Yes.
That the politicians are forcing these people onto them.
Yes.
And sometimes the way the promotional system, the things they are forced to do.
Yes. It's a difficult one. But the good news is that they share with some of us. So the advocacy must go on so that we strengthen their hand to do what we did. That also brings to the fore as to the appointment of the service commanders and all that. Should it be in the hands of the head of state, for instance?
Well, they need people they can be comfortable with once they come into office.
That conversation, I think we have to also bring it to the table and look at it again as to service commandment, appointment and all that. You go to other jurisdictions, you realize that some of the security people are, appointed as like private people. and then they operate on behalf of the state. Is that something we can emulate and then practice it here? Also, one thing that we always forget, that we can say all these things, but we as citizens, when we sleep on our right to punish those who engage us in this, when we leave them like that, they will continue to do what we're doing.
And then you are punishing all of them because they are equally guilty.
Why not? Is it wrong? Is it wrong? But sometimes it becomes so difficult. But I'm saying that let us set example at least once. Once we do that, it becomes a learning curve for the rest to follow. There are a host of other things, but we believe that we should be vigilant on these things, and then so as to make sure that we can save the state. But polarization of the army or the security service in whatever form, either through ethnicity or through political party machinations and all that, will not bode well for an army that has served this country for a very long time, continue to serve us good. We don't need to compromise their standards. Maybe
is it the PPP and the other parties? They should give us reason, because these parties are all guilty.
Unfortunately,
and they will do it anyway.
Yeah. Unfortunately, none of the other small parties.
Let's hear what Professor Kokwasari has to say about it, and I'll share some of your messages also with the rest of the world shortly. And remember that your election headquarters is bringing you the continuing coverage, comprehensive, of the NDC parliamentary and presidential primaries. You don't get it as any better. Now, this show is brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group, close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on MTN to join. Duraplast, how you get your water matters. Remember, where Duraplast goes, water flows. And DBS Industries, roofing, Fie. Yes, Professor Kokwasari, what do you have to say about this? Particularly, how do we stop this?
Well, Samson, it comes down to the way we have accepted to do politics. The way we have accepted to do politics can only breed problems. Look, this issue is not just about the security sector. It's the politicization of the whole public service. And it's not an overnight phenomenon. This is something that has been going on for 3 decades. And it's just going to weaken our constitutional buffers. You know, people don't trust the media, people don't trust the Electoral Commission, people don't trust the courts, and so on and so forth. Why? Well, because of the way we've done politics, because of the way we push political apparatus into these institutions. There was a time in Ghana when we really could trust our public service. So I recall people like Jeke Dakun, the Director of Public Prosecutions. Everybody knew him, and he stood for what was right. No, the Attorney General did not direct how he should do his work. There was Justice Aban, who was the Electoral Commissioner under Unigov. Achampon went to him, he said, no, I'm not going to declare results that you want, you know, even at the risk of my own life. There was the SID, people investigating the murder of the judges against tremendous risk, but they did their job. And we have, under this Fourth Republic, weakened our public service to such an extent that we are now undermining democracy, we are undermining our national security. And if you are not careful, the consequences could be disastrous. It is time to write a Public Officers Ethics Act that define and delineate areas that politicians can go and cannot go to. I cannot understand why politicians are involved in the recruitment of people to the security service. I cannot understand why a CEO of a state-owned enterprise can come and sit on TV and do politics. It's unthinkable to me. I cannot understand why somebody who works in the media can be appointed to the board of a state-owned enterprise. These are all subtle ways of corrupting our institutions, and the end result is what we are seeing. This is a country that has become increasingly polycratic. Too many people in the public sector, not on merit. It has become a country where we are basically, I would say, we are suffering from kakistocracy and even kleptocracy. And these things are not happening by chance. They are happening because of the way we do politics. You cannot, as a politician, say you are going to come in and give jobs to your tribe people. You cannot say you are going to give jobs to your religious people. But you can say openly, publicly, and nobody even says a word. When I come, I'm going to take care of my foot soldiers. How can you be running for president and going around campaigning that when you come, you take care of your foot soldiers? Are you running to be president of your party, or are you running to be president of your country? It has gotten to some stage. I used to be very, very, very active in politics. But these days, I'm even ashamed to seem to be doing politics because I just think the way we do politics is horribly wrong. And we got to do political party reform. We got to do campaign finance reform. We really got to control this problem. Because if we don't do that, we are sitting on a time bomb.
Mm. So I don't know. Let me share just a few messages with you. There are some people who, a number of messages, I just boxed them together, that we should pray that this same mentality does not take over the judiciary as far as appointments there are concerned. On the dual citizenship matter, isn't it funny that under our law, a dual citizen cannot be a colonel in command of a military unit, but every one of his or her subordinates, the actually fighting men in battle, can all be dual citizens? What's wrong with us? At best, Article 94(2)(a) could not only have had naturalized citizens in mind, not natural-born Ghanaians who had subsequently acquired the citizenship of another country, because, as my good pal, Professor Sari has eloquently explained, the latter status, a birth citizen, Ghanaian, who is a dual citizen, is a status that wasn't permitted in the same original constitution in which we find Article 94(2)(a). Okay. Gifty says that, I guess the biggest problem is how people can engineer electoral victory, sometimes through monetization. I have a bit of a funny feeling about this, but I'm sure we'll get to a position that works someday. Because if people can influence elections, opening it up that way means even the people's will can be subverted through engineered victory and other things. I hope it makes sense what I'm saying. So, for example, when Matthew Opoku Prempeh showed up for the first time in Menchia, the refrain was that this was a man who was coming from abroad with money. So he could afford to buy the primaries. So people from abroad will make the money and just come and buy. Koko Echubuesako is commenting about my not impounding the vehicle thing and how he feels that is deliberate on the part of the officials who do that kind of thing. Guys, it doesn't look good on you. Just stop. It's only the uniform that separates you from us. You don't know where you'll be tomorrow. Do the right thing by the citizens. And then this is from YK Ansa Yeboah. He says that, Samson, don't waste your time in this political gimmickry by dual citizenship by these NDC MPP politicians. They are doing it just for the votes. Even simple voting by Ghanaians living abroad. They won't do it since 2006. So the court issued an order compelling that an order of mandamus that the EC should take a law to a CI to Parliament so that the modalities will be rolled out. After a year, when they hadn't done it, my client cited them for contempt. They came and begged, and the court gave them 1 more year. That has not been done. Let's see what they will do subsequently. I've got a few more of your messages here, but time just ran out on us. My outfit, as always, is by Latida. By Habil's Couture. You'll find them at Ajiringano Gates. Thank you very much. Join me tomorrow, Sunday, at 2 p.m. on The Law, which is our weekly legal clinic. I'm hosting Oliver Baka-Vomawo, lawyer and researcher, and Kofi Yeboah, General Secretary of the Ghana Journalists Association, to look at press freedom versus false crimes. Thank you to our guests for your time and for helping us with the insightful discussions that we have had this morning. Dr. Kwame Asasante, Senior Lecturer, Department of Political Science and Director, Center for European Studies, University of Ghana. Dr. Kwadwo Appiah Tua, Associate Professor, School of Law, University of Ghana, Legon, and Professor Stephen Kwekuasari, University of Florida, CDD, Democracy and Development Fellow in Public Law and Justice, member of the Florida Bar. We started with Dr. Eduan Anyenini, of the former Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission and convener of the Pensioner Bondholders Forum. Thank you also very much. Kojo Yankson and the crack team join you right away to continue with the comprehensive coverage of the NDC's parliamentary and presidential primaries. Have a good afternoon.